Hello everyone, welcome to my channel and my messy studio. My name is Mark and I'm an artist and a fountain pen addict who uses them to make art. And in this video, we're going to look at a very unique pen, the Pilot Justus 95. This, as far as I know, is the only modern pen on the market with an adjustable flex nib, with a ring on the grip section that when turned makes the nib more or less flexible. This is a pen that I've been interested in for many years, but for one reason or another never got around to buying. Now that I have one, I'm very glad I finally took the plunge, because it turns out it has some surprising qualities that make it an ideal pen for artists. We're going to take a close look at this pen, take it through my series of standardized proprietary tests, and of course draw with it extensively so that you can decide whether this pen is for you. Let's get started. Here's the pen up close. This is one of the larger pens in Pilot's lineup, being close in size to the Pilot 823. However, in terms of design, it's closer to the flat-top shape of the Pilot 912, but with a handsome guilloche pattern on the body. This pen measures 147 millimeters capped, 134 millimeters uncapped, and posted a comfortable 165 millimeters. In terms of weight, it's fairly light at 27 grams. Let's examine the ergonomics. This pen is very close to Pilot's other offerings in this size, with one significant difference, the grip section. The grip section in most of the other Pilots are fairly short at around 20 millimeters, whereas this one is considerably longer at about 28, with the adjusting ring positioned about a third of the way up. While this ring does rub against the fingers to the point that you never stop being conscious of it, I don't find it especially bothersome. In fact, it helps you make your grip more secure. Furthermore, I prefer longer grip sections since they allow for a larger variety of grips. What's more, the threads on the barrel have a low profile and are well polished and don't rub against the fingers if you grip your pen higher up. I also like that there's almost no step up in girth from the grip section to the barrel, because I sometimes hold the pen way back when I need to create longer strokes. The pen has a nice weight to it, light yet substantial, and the balance is perfect, both posted and unposted. This is one of those things that Pilot seems to always get right. And as per usual, in Pilot's higher-end offerings, the build quality is excellent, with smooth, accurate threading in the cap and grip section, and polished metal cap and barrel rings, making this feel every bit like a premium product. This is a cartridge converter pen which uses the excellent Con 70 converter, which has very decent ink capacity, though it can be difficult to thoroughly clean. And though I love my pens with built-in filling mechanisms, I have to admit that cartridge converters are really the most practical option, since it means that the pen has no moving parts that can wear down. No moving parts, of course, other than this flex adjusting ring, which leads us to the most interesting part of this pen. This ring controls a narrow plate which extends when it's turned to the left. This adds support to the tines, making the nib stiffer. When the ring is turned to the right, the plate retracts, allowing the tines to flex freely. We'll talk about the effectiveness of this shortly, but I do have a small gripe with the mechanism itself. When turning to the right, you can sometimes also unscrew the barrel, a small annoying price to pay for this unique mechanism. This nib is a touch smaller than the number 15 nibs found on the 823, with slightly more tapered shoulders. I was initially worried that the adjustable mechanism would make it impossible to remove the nib and the feed, but fortunately, just like all the other Pilots, it pops right out for easy cleaning. This is great for us artists that often switch inks and need to quickly and thoroughly rinse out their pens. I'm sure all of you are desperately eager to know if this mechanism actually works or not, and if it's useful. So before I take this pen through my series of tests, I might as well tell you that yes, it works, and yes, it's very useful, but not in the way I thought it would be. For the sake of consistency, I'm using one of my favorite drawing inks, Noodler's Lexington Gray. Not only does this ink work well in a large variety of pens, its transparency allows us to better gauge the flow, which will be very important to see here. Also, for the sake of consistency, these tests are being conducted on Strathmore Bristol paper. In this test, I checked for skipping and dripping, and true to every other Pilot product, it performed perfectly, putting down lines without skipping and dripping at every angle and speed. This, I think, is my 8th Pilot pen, and I have to say, I've never experienced any issues with them out of the box. All started right up and performed perfectly. In the flex test, this pen isn't terribly impressive, which should not be a surprise to anyone, since this is a pen with a soft rather than a flex nib. It puts down a fine line and with pressure can go up to a modest broad. The tines are fairly stiff and require a touch of pressure to flex, making it easy to do normal unflexed writing. This may make you question the entire point of the adjustable flex feature, but as we shall see shortly, it has its uses. In reverse writing, the pen is excellent, like all of Pilot's nibs, delivering a very consistent triple extra fine line. I would rate this pen about as flexible as a Pilot Falcon, a solid 3.5 or perhaps even a 4 on my flex scale, being just short of being semi-flex. If you're looking for something super flexible, this certainly isn't it, and I would look at the Pilot 912 FA or the Pilot 743 FA instead. But for those that just want a touch of line variation, this would be a very suitable option. In the feedback test, this pen is quite smooth. Pilot Gold nibs are really the gold standard when it comes to smoothness, and simply a pleasure to draw with on all kinds of paper. And in the wetness test, this pen puts down a moderately wet line unflexed and a wetter line flexed, which is to be expected in a well-performing flex pen. Unlike many flex pens, this flow isn't too wet, so lines won't pool up and become messy if you put down a bunch of layers of hatch. All in all, in the soft setting, this pen performs very similarly to the Pilot Falcon Soft Fine, which, considering the popularity of the Falcon among artists, is a decent compliment. Now let's turn this setting to hard and see how the pen performs. Just like in the previous test, the pen puts down an unbroken line in every direction and at every speed. But there's a surprising change in performance in that the lines here are noticeably thinner and lighter, closer to an extra fine. I assume that's happening because the metal plate, when fully extended, presses the nib more firmly against the feed, significantly limiting the flow. This is an interesting factor that I hadn't considered. When talking about a pen's performance, we often talk about how much ink the feed provides or the tightness of the tines in the nib, without considering the interaction between the nib and the feed, and that the pressure between them also plays a part in how the pen writes. In the flex department, the range of flex was roughly the same, the main difference being that the nib felt stiffer when the supporting plate was pressed against it, making the pen slightly harder to flex. However, since the unflexed line was considerably thinner than it was in the soft setting, the line variation looked more pronounced. Still, it felt like the supporting plate prevented the nib from fully flexing, so in the hard mode, I would rate this nib at a slightly stiffer 3.5. In the feedback test, the pen felt slightly scratchier, which makes sense since ink acts as a lubricant, so drier pens usually have more feedback. In the wetness test is where the difference between the hard and soft setting really shows itself to the fullest. In the hard setting, the pen writes super dry, barely smearing. When the pen is flexed, however, the wetness is similar to what it is in the soft setting. I would say overall that in the hard setting, the pen did great, putting down a sharp, precise line with a touch of flex, similar to the performance of one of my favorite pens, the Pilot Custom 74 Soft Fine. Okay, let's do the last and most important test, which is to draw with this pen, and as I draw, I'll give you my concluding remarks. I'm using my Talon's Art Creation Sketchbook, which contains a smooth multimedia paper that resists feathering and striking through. Once again, the pen is filled with my go-to ink for testing pens, Noodler's Lexington Gray. While this pen has been on my radar for as long as I've been collecting pens, I resisted buying it since it was on the expensive side, and from the reviews, its performance didn't seem to be particularly impressive. The flex wasn't much better than the Pilot Falcon, and what's worse, there didn't seem to be any significant difference between the hard and soft setting, leading me to believe that the adjustment mechanism was a gimmick. Given the no-frills, somewhat serious nature of Pilot products, this was very puzzling. So, what changed my mind? Well, some time ago I read a review that mentioned that the mechanism wasn't designed to control the nib's flexibility at all, but was instead intended to control flow, allowing you to use the pen on a variety of papers. This made perfect sense, since flex pens usually have more generous ink flow, making them a poor choice for anything other than ink-friendly paper. For non-artists, this is a big advantage, since nowadays paper comes in such a huge range of quality, everything from newsprint to business stationery, and you never know what you're going to encounter throughout the day. But for us artists, the ability to adjust flow also has huge advantages, allowing us to control the line weight and, depending on the ink used, the value of that line. That, much more than the ability to control flex, makes the Pilot Justus a highly versatile 2-pens-in-1 drawing instrument. I say 2 pens in one because we're almost dealing with 2 different pens here. In the soft setting, it performs like a Pilot Falcon Soft Fine, and in the hard setting, like a Pilot Custom 74 Soft Fine, a pretty formidable combination of tools. In this drawing, I started in the soft setting, giving me a bold line with expressive variation. With a light touch, you can also create lines that are very thin, so even without the adjustment feature, this would be a great pen for all kinds of line work. However, in the hard setting, the lines become very delicate, allowing you to put down many layers of hatching and build up values gradually. Furthermore, by using Lexington Gray, which is a transparent ink, the lines not only become thinner, they also become lighter, giving you even greater control over value. This would be a great pen for artists who really enjoy line variation and want a pen that is equally comfortable throwing down bold strokes and gauzy layers of fine hatching. If that's you, I don't think there's any pen on the market that performs quite as well as the Pilot Justus 95. Now, you may ask, why do you need a single pen to do everything? Couldn't you just use 2 pens to do the same thing? My reply is this: yes, of course you can. I do it all the time, and it's actually easier to quickly switch between 2 pens than it is to switch between the hard and soft setting, since the mechanism is fairly stiff and not easy to rotate quickly. But it's a little bit like using a Swiss Army knife. Does a fixed blade knife and a regular screwdriver perform the same job? Absolutely, and often better, but I'd still rather carry a Swiss Army knife. There are plenty of times when I don't need to carry 2 pens around, or don't want to, and it's nice to have a single pen that can do so many things. Now, if it only came with a built-in corkscrew, it would be even better. To conclude, this is a fantastic pen that I strongly recommend, especially for those thinking about purchasing either a Pilot Falcon or a Pilot Custom 74 and are not sure which one to get. I believe that this is a pen that has been poorly marketed, and really, the marking on the grip section, S and H for soft and hard, should be shifted to H and L for high and low flow. With the purpose of its adjustment mechanism redefined, the pen performs extremely well, making it one of the most versatile drawing instruments out there. The only drawback to it is the price tag, which here in the US can be a whopping $330. The good thing is that this pen can sometimes be purchased through eBay directly from Japan for almost half that price. And while this is still expensive, keep in mind that Pilot pens are noted for their exceptional blend of quality and performance, and with proper maintenance, this pen will give you decades of problem-free service. I hope all of you enjoyed my review of the Pilot Justus 95 and found it useful in your purchasing decisions. If you haven't done so, please subscribe and stay tuned for more pen and art material reviews, and of course, my pen and ink drawing instruction. Thanks for watching, and see you back in my messy studio very soon. Bye-bye.